Well, that's creepy.
The tree was this old, twisted, gray thing in the middle of the forest. Its leaves had left it for good many years ago, so the branches laid bare, reaching skywards like jagged hands. The damn thing, honestly, probably wasn't even alive anymore. The bark of the tree fell off in pieces, and where it hadn't already come off, there were carvings. Countless carvings, letters all over the trunk. HR, KP, NMM, DR. The list goes on. There didn't seem barely a place for any more initials. The tree was terrifying against the midday sun. The shadow it cast was long and dark. I was only 7 years old at the time, but I already knew this tree was a terrible thing. Derek told me the thing was called the hating tree, as we sat on a nearby stump. The tree was about a mile into the forest that surrounded our suburban neighborhood, in a clearing. There were 4 of us that summer day by the tree. There was myself, our friend Derek with the messy sand blonde hair and a missing tooth, Victor with his stark black hair and sharp eyes, and Harry, bald and portly. Harry clutched to his chest a Power Rangers action figure, his favorite toy that he owned. Harry and Victor stood by the tree and muttered about something between each other. Occasionally, Harry would get animated, and Derek and I could hear Harry's protests to Victor's idea. Derek leaned back and drank his warm soda. "This is dumb. If we want to get Kyle back, let's just fight him," he said. "He's bigger than us because he's a 4th grader. But there's 4 of us," he said excitedly, holding up 4 fingers. I shrugged. Jimmy said he saw Kyle throw around 5 kids like it was nothing. "I don't think we stand a chance," I said solemnly, placing my backpack in front of me, reaching down to find the snacks I packed. By the time I pulled out a granola bar for me and Derek, Harry and Vic were approaching us at the stump. Harry was holding back tears. "All right, we put Harry's initials and Kyle's on the tree. Now we just gotta destroy the toy," Vic said. Harry flinched at those words. Derek looked at Vic intently. "Why?" he said to Vic. Vic scoffed. "'Cause that's how the tree works, stupid. You do something to hurt yourself, then the tree makes sure something happens to hurt the other person too." I turned to Derek, remembering the plan. I finished up chewing my granola bar and elaborated. "Yeah, and that's Harry's favorite toy, so if we break it, it's gonna hurt Harry. But it's also gonna hurt Kyle real bad." Derek looked at all 3 of us, head on a swivel. "And this works?" "Yep," Vic said. "And you guys think it's a good idea?" Derek said. "Yeah, Gabby said she did it once. She cut her hair, and the next day Angie got gum stuck in her hair," Vic announced. We did all remember the day Angie got gum stuck in her hair by accident. Derek sighed and reached in my backpack and got out the hammer. "Promise we never use the tree again, or I won't give you the hammer." "Fine. Cross my heart we won't come back," Vic said. Harry straightened up and crossed his heart. Derek turned to me. "Amy?" I crossed my heart too. Derek handed the hammer to Vic and sat back down. Vic handed the hammer to Harry. "You gotta do it, dude," he told Harry. Harry was dumbfounded. "What?" Vic nodded. "Uh-huh, that's the way it all works." The 2 walked to the tree. I stayed with Derek, sitting in silence. It took convincing, but Vic finally got Harry to destroy the toy. He spent the afternoon crying, and we did our best to comfort him. But when you're 7, your favorite toy means a lot to you. Sure enough, the next day, Kyle came to school holding back tears. His father had smashed his GameCube that morning. That day at lunch, Derek made us swear again never to do anything with the tree, and seeing Kyle so devastated by his father's outburst, we agreed. We didn't even need proof it was our fault. We felt bad enough. None of us thought about the tree again until high school. The 4 of us had grown apart. Me and Vic stayed close, and Derek and Harry stayed close. But our group of 4 had turned into 2 groups of 2. Harry lost weight and became one of the more popular kids in school. Derek became the school quarterback. I felt bad about telling Derek that I couldn't make the football games because it was the same day as my Dungeons & Dragons session, but we had grown so far apart it barely bothered him. Vic, undoubtedly, had it the best, though. He had found real, honest love. Angie, the poor gum-haired girl, grew up from her bratty elementary days into a kind, beautiful girl. She was well loved by the entire school. You would be hard-pressed to find anyone who could say anything bad about the gentle, soft-spoken girl. Her thin blonde hair fell gracefully to her shoulders, and her gray eyes radiated incredible warmth when she smiled. Vic and Angie, as a couple, was one of those things that shocked us that it happened, but in retrospect, must have been fated. When Angie was younger, Vic was always the guy around for her. When she was disliked by her peers in elementary and middle school, Vic remained her loyal friend. They had similar interests, a similar sense of humor, and by middle school, the two were inseparable. By then, Vic had fallen into the unpopular crowd with me, and Angie was fast on her way to popularity. At the start of high school, the whole school was stunned when Vic and Angie started dating. Well, almost everyone, I guess. I was still close to Vic, and Angie by extension, so I saw it coming a mile away. In fact, Angie was one of the reasons our group fell apart. Not only did Vic love Angie madly, but so did Harry. Harry developed a deep love of the girl in middle school, but Angie was clearly interested in only being with Vic. When Harry, in sophomore year, tried to convince Angie multiple times to leave Vic for him, Vic exploded at Harry. The friendship of years burned away in the flash of a moment. A bitter rivalry was born in the ashes between the two. Things fell apart when Harry was voted prom king and Angie the queen. The two got the prom royalty dance together as the school watched in awe. They seemed so happy in each other's arms as they danced. Graceful, they flew across the floor, and for a moment, I even thought that maybe Harry and Angie were meant to be together. But during that dance, I caught Angie glance at Vic with a smile, and Vic smiled back. He was enamored with how beautiful she looked on the dance floor, and her glance showed that she wished it was Vic in her arms. Unfortunately, Harry caught these glances too. After the dance, he gave the old Irish goodbye and left without a trace. 2 days later, Vic called me in tears, saying he and Angie broke up. Angie didn't feel the same way about him anymore. I was stunned. Just 2 days ago, Angie was looking at Vic like he was the world while she danced. Got in my car and drove to Vic's place and asked what happened. Vic told me that the two had a fight and that Angie confessed she didn't love Vic anymore. Vic asked why, and she said the feeling just faded away. This only caused more arguing. Eventually, Angie stormed off and left Vic alone. I hung out with Vic to comfort him the rest of the evening before getting in my car to call Angie.
Hello?
The voice on the other end of the line sounded weak and hoarse, but it was undoubtedly Angie's. I heard what happened. I just talked to Vic, I said. She burst into tears and described the fight to me. It was just like Vic's story. When I asked why she didn't love Vic anymore, she told me that her and Vic snuck off to go do the deed in Vic's truck. As she laid next to him that night, she looked at him and just felt a sudden panic. Did she want to be with Vic? What did she see in Vic? It was as though all the feelings washed away in a moment. She put on clothes, got Vic up, and demanded to be taken home. It had been rough for the two ever since. It was a strange explanation, but it did make some sense. The next night, Vic sent me a text, and my heart sank. Fucker went to the tree. Now I'm going to. I knew in a moment what had really happened now. Harry stormed out that night to go to the hating tree. I shot up and got dressed and sent a text to Vic as I was getting in the car. Vic, no. I'm on my way. Stop. His only response was, I'm gonna end him. When I arrived, it was too late. I emerged from my car and started running to the tree when I heard the crack of the gunshot. I found Vic dead next to the tree when I got there, his father's shotgun laid still smoking next to his mangled corpse. His head had been blown off in a bloody mess. On the tree, painted in blood among the other initials, two stood out. HC, VB, VB, HC. I stood in stunned silence. I knew I could try and warn Harry, but if the tree really worked, there was nothing I could do now. I called the police and sat on that old stump by the tree, looking at its malicious branches reaching up at the full moon. It cast a much longer shadow in that moonlight than it ever had before. Sure enough, the next morning on his way to school, Harry was T-boned at an intersection and was killed instantly. The funeral for Vic was that weekend, and the funeral for Harry was on that Monday. The turnout for both was massive. Students, teachers, family friends from all over came to see the two boys one last time. During Vic's wake, I ran into Derek, whom I hadn't spoken to for months. I asked if he knew anything about what Harry did on prom night, and Derek took a deep breath. He sat down and looked up at me. I got a call that night. Out of the blue, he told me how much he hated me. Thought I didn't deserve anything I had, that I was a shitty quarterback and a shitty person, and that if I didn't leave him alone, he would tell the whole school I was gay. He leaned back in his chair, tears running down his cheeks. I told him that in confidence. He swore to never tell anyone. He was even there helping me when I came out to my family, and I was there for him for all the stuff with Angie. He was my best friend. He broke, bawling into his hands. He looked up at me, desperate in his eyes for an answer. Why would he do that? Why would he cut me off like that? I paused for a long moment, and then I knew the answer. Because hatred is a double-edged sword. Any harm you want to inflict on another, you do to yourself as well. I'm telling you this not only to get a terrible secret off my chest, but for a far worse reason as well. 2 years ago, I made sure the hating tree was cut down. No one could suffer like those two did now. I live in a new city several states away. Yesterday morning, my fiancé and I took a hike in the park an hour from our house. As we hiked, my fiancé decided to take a switchback to speed up our progress. This took us a bit off the beaten path, and we found ourselves in a clearing near an old, gray, gnarled tree with an unnaturally long shadow, with countless initials on its crumbling, blood-stained trunk.